Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's talk about a really strange paradox. What if the very system designed to heal us is actually making our planet sick? It sounds crazy, right? But today, we're diving into how modern healthcare, an industry that's all about doing no harm, has become one of the biggest drivers of the climate crisis.
All right, to really wrap your head around this, try this on for size. If you took the entire global healthcare industry and turned it into its own country, it would be the fifth biggest polluter in the world. I mean, just let that sink in. The very thing we all depend on to keep us healthy is a massive force behind a crisis that's, well, threatening our health. And we're talking about a huge number here, 4.4% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Now, you might think, is that a lot? Well, yeah, it means healthcare pollutes more than the entire aviation and shipping industries put together. So in our attempt to heal people, we're accidentally pumping out emissions that are fueling a crisis that's making even more people sick.
And this is where things get really tricky. It creates this dangerous feedback loop, a vicious cycle that, researchers are scrambling to figure out. Basically, the worse the climate gets, think extreme weather, new diseases, the more we need healthcare. But the more we use healthcare, the worse we make the climate. It's a trap.
So here's how that cycle actually plays out. Step 1, you get more climate events, right? Wildfires, hurricanes, you name it. That leads to more injuries, more breathing problems, and a ton of mental health stress. Step 2, all of that drives up the demand for healthcare. So what happens? Hospitals crank the AC, ambulances are running nonstop, and they're using mountains of single-use plastics. All that activity pumps out more greenhouse gases, which just fuels more climate events. You see? It's a crisis that literally feeds itself.
And look, this isn't some far-off, maybe someday problem. This is happening right now. We're seeing climate change make things like asthma and heart disease worse. We're seeing mosquitoes that carry diseases like dengue showing up in places they never were before. Heat waves are becoming deadlier, and just the sheer stress of it all is doing a number on our mental health, leading to more anxiety and depression.
So, the big question is, where is all this pollution actually coming from? Well, experts break it down into 3 categories, or scopes. Scope 1 is the obvious stuff, the direct emissions from the hospitals themselves. Scope 2 is the energy they buy to keep the lights on. But the real monster, the one that accounts for most of it, is Scope 3. Think of it like the hidden part of an iceberg. It's the entire supply chain, making the drugs, the equipment, shipping it all over the world, even the food they serve to patients. It's absolutely massive.
Okay, but it's not all bad news. We're not just stuck in this cycle forever. The good news is that researchers and leaders in healthcare are totally focused on how to break it. The big goal now? To flip this whole thing on its head, to turn that vicious cycle into a virtuous one, where making people healthier and making the planet healthier are the same thing.
And one of the coolest insights coming from a study in the BMJ is that the real power for change isn't necessarily at the very top. It's on the front lines. Think about it. The doctors, the nurses, they're the ones who see the waste and the inefficiencies up close every single day. They're in the perfect spot to say, hey, we can do this better, and to push for smarter, more sustainable ways of doing things.
So, what does this new approach look like? Well, it's captured in this idea called the Learning Health System 2.0. Honestly, you can just think of it as a massive software update for our entire approach to medicine. Instead of just reacting to problems, this system is designed to use data to constantly learn and get smarter. It figures out what works, cuts out what doesn't, and gets ready for the next big shock, whether that's a pandemic or the growing climate crisis.
And one of the biggest and maybe most obvious places to start is waste. We're talking about a truly enormous amount of waste in healthcare. And it's not just about throwing away gloves and masks. It's also about wasted time, wasted resources, and performing tests and procedures that just aren't necessary.
Just how big is this problem? Researchers have a name for it, the 60-30-10 challenge. It breaks down like this. On average, only about 60% of the care we get is actually based on solid scientific evidence. A whopping 30% is considered waste, low value, or completely unnecessary care. And the last 10% can actually cause harm. That 30% in the middle, that's not just wasting money. It's a massive source of carbon emissions for absolutely no good reason. Okay, so if getting rid of that 30% of waste is a huge part of the answer, that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? Who's actually doing a good job of this? Which countries are leading the pack when it comes to building a healthcare system that's both efficient and green? Well, for the first time ever, we actually have an answer.
A really groundbreaking new study basically created a global report card. It took 38 of the world's developed countries and benchmarked them on everything: their emissions, how vulnerable they are to climate change, and how developed their systems are. It's a fascinating look at who's getting it right. And what they found is that these countries fall into 5 basic groups. You've got the vulnerable low emitters, think countries like Mexico or Colombia, that don't pollute as much but are really exposed to climate risks. And then you have groups all the way up to what the researchers call the Goldilocks zone. These are the countries like Sweden or Germany that have found that just right balance of great healthcare, a strong economy, and a smaller climate footprint. And when you start comparing these groups, you see some really stark differences. Take resources, for example. The Goldilocks countries just have more of everything: more doctors, more hospital beds, more money in the system. And that makes them way more resilient than the countries that are in the vulnerable or middle-of-the-road categories. And you see the exact same pattern when it comes to just being able to see a doctor. Access to care is way higher in the Goldilocks and robust countries. This really highlights a major equity gap. It shows that how vulnerable a country is to climate change is directly linked to how strong its healthcare system is in the first place. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that these Goldilocks countries show us that it's actually possible. They're living proof that you can have a wealthy, highly developed nation with great healthcare without it costing the earth. They've basically created a blueprint that other countries can now look to and learn from. And all of this leaves us with one final, really big question. It's clearer than ever that you can't have healthy people without a healthy planet. So knowing everything we now know, we really have to ask ourselves, is our healthcare system actually ready for what's coming? Is it ready to heal us and to stop hurting the planet in the process?